Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the co founder of Soto Dialer, no other than Mr. Aidan Sowa. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Aidan, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yes, my name is Aidan. I'm the owner of Soto Dialer, and essentially what it is like a predictive call solution, so multi-line calls, calling multiple numbers at the same exact time.
Interesting innovation, Mr. Aidan, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. Can you explain what smart parallel dialing is and in a simple terms?
Sure. So, I mean, essentially what we do is we optimize for the fact that you want to get as many pickups on an hourly basis. So what a lot of people do is they're dialing, and it's not optimized in terms of like getting as many people answering the phone as possible. So we have many lines on the back end, like many different phone numbers which are dialing, and we optimize based on how many people are picking up the phone. So that way you can talk to as many live people as possible and reduce the number of people potentially hanging up. So you want to connect to as many people as possible while not wasting any leads.
How is smart parallel dialing different from traditional power dialing or auto dialing?
Well, one thing which is very different about it is that you could talk to a lot more people, and it's a lot more optimized because our system essentially learns exactly um, how the leads behave. So if the leads are not very responsive, it adjusts accordingly. So that way it's dialing more and more and more versus traditional power dialing. It's just going at the same pace no matter what. And that might be a really slow pace and it's not exactly optimized.
Mr. Aidan, what specific challenges in outbound sales does smart parallel dialing solve?
Well, the biggest one it solves is the fact that for many, cold calling is basically dead for many people. And so it solves that. It makes it possible to talk to like 50, 60, 70 people on an hourly basis, which results in more deals for businesses.
Interesting indeed. How does smart parallel dialing impact the productivity of sales reps?
Well, it makes them a lot more productive because one of the issues which we see is that a lot of people are just sitting there for like 5, 6 minutes waiting for someone to pick up the phone if they're using an auto dialer. And oftentimes they get distracted. They're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they're doing other things. However, if they know someone's going to be picking up the phone every 20 to 30 seconds, then they're on high alert. They're no longer like falling asleep slash getting distracted on Netflix or whatever. They're fully focused on getting the actual job done. So a lot more optimized in terms of getting results.
In what ways does improve connection rates compared to older methods?
Well, one of the ways is the fact that we rotate phone numbers. So we have a system to avoid spam detection. We have like around 100 numbers actually, which are constantly rotating in order to prevent these numbers from getting flagged. Because traditional methods right now, they're just dialing with like one or two numbers. And the problem which you run into is that these numbers get detected as spam if you're doing enough volume. And then as a result, you stop getting anyone to pick up the phone.
How does smart parallel dialing prioritize which leads to call first?
Well, it optimizes based on like pickup rate. So what we have is on the back end is if, for example, in your particular industry, on that particular lead list, you're getting around a 5% pickup rate, then we know you got to use like 14 lines. Versus if it's a smaller, like higher pickup rather, then you require less lines. So it will auto adjust based on the results which you're getting.
Can you share data or any data or success stories that demonstrate its effectiveness?
Sure, definitely. Well, in terms of like data, what we're seeing is 50 to 70 pickups per hour. And in terms of like actual effectiveness, in terms of like booked appointments, what we're seeing right now is, well, it depends on the industry actually, but typically speaking, a lot of people are getting a booked call every 100 calls in some industries, others is every 200. But what this results in is like with several people who started with us, they were only getting like 1 or 2 calls booked a day. Now with us, they're getting anywhere from like 8 to 10 booked calls every single day, on the low end.
So, do you think your innovation is progressing?
Yeah, it is. One of the things which you're going to be implementing soon is AI transcriptions as well. So that way people can not only just listen to like the recordings of the call, but they can get a transcription as well, which is pretty useful because when you can listen to transcription and you can see the transcription of the actual call, then you can figure out what you're doing wrong. Because that's another key aspect which people sort of messing up in dialing is they don't know what they're doing wrong or right, and we aim to fix that eventually with like the AI transcriptions.
What role does AI or machine learning play in smart parallel dialing?
It plays a huge role because we're able to tell exactly how many like people should be dialing at the exact same time. And so if it's not optimized, say we were dialing too many numbers at the same time, what would end up happening is we'd end up burning and wasting a lot of numbers. Not only would be people be hanging up on the other side, but also we would be burning out the numbers. So we have it fully optimized that auto adjusts based on the lead's behavior. So it makes a massive difference in that regard.
Mr. Aidan, how does this technology help reduce lead fatigue or customer irritation?
Well, one of the great things is because we're rotating these numbers, they can't really tell that you've already dialed them before. So even if you happen to have called them before, they don't necessarily know that was you because we're rotating the numbers. Versus if you're getting a call from the same exact phone number every single day, you're probably not going to pick up the phone after a while. You're just not going to answer it. But if it's different numbers, it's kind of hard to just say that's an issue. So we rotate it, and we also have like what we refer to as lead recycling on the back end. So we go through the numbers. If they don't pick up the phone, if they never answer, we go through those same phone numbers around twice a day for approximately 10 days. And then from there, what we typically say to our clients is just leave it there for a while and then come back after a while, maybe after a month or so. And then you can go through that same lead list again. And that may sound crazy to have to go through the exact same lead list like 10 times if they don't answer, but we have noticed that you can more or less get away with that.
Interesting indeed, Mr. Aidan. And how does smart parallel dialing integrate with popular CRM systems?
Yeah, so we can integrate with pretty much every CRM, whether it's like go high level, whether it's Salesforce, HubSpot, pretty much anything. And that's that's really what we do is we integrate with any CRMs. And if there is a CRM which we haven't integrated yet with, we're able to make that integration possible.
And what kind of teams benefit the most from using smart parallel dialing?
It's definitely teams which are doing higher volume. For someone who's just dialing off of their phone, probably not as valuable to be using an auto dialer, but it's essentially built for a sales team. So people who are not satisfied with the current amount of leads which they're getting, that's where this is like the most appealing thing. So I would say like real estate wholesalers, solar, pretty much any industry where you need to call to generate leads. And if you can have more leads, that's better, that type of industry. For industries which are like smaller, we do have like, lesser numbers which you can go after, for example, for expired listings and things like that. But I would say primarily it's used for sales teams which want to push massive volume so that way they can generate a massive number of leads.
How steep is the learning curve for sales teams adopting this technology?
I would say it's very quick. I mean, typically speaking, within like 15 to 20 minutes, someone can understand exactly how like the interface works because we have like tutorial videos on exactly how to use the software. So 15, 20 minutes is pretty fast for this particular industry.
Very fast indeed. And does this smart parallel dialing pose any compliance or legal challenges?
No, no, it doesn't because the way we have it set up is that it's compliant with all like legalities. So there's no legal issues unless, for example, you're calling like the do not call list, which obviously we would not recommend because these people have opted out, and that's illegal. But I wouldn't recommend doing that, and everyone should just scrub the do not call list on both the state and national level, just because you want to avoid any type of lawsuits. Even though they are extremely rare, you do want to scrub that.
What metrics should teams track to measure the success of a smart paralleling dialing?
Well, I would track for one, how many people are you talking to on an hourly basis? Two, what percentage of people are not interested? What percentage of people are interested in like actually booking a call? And what percentage of those people show up to the calls? And then the final metric would be how many calls, how many dials do I have to make? How many people do I have to talk to in order to be able to get a sale? Because that's one of the hardest things about cold calling is that people are dialing and they don't know like, okay, if I do like 5 hours of work or 4 hours of work, is that going to lead to a sale? And if you track your metrics, then you're going to be able to say, okay, if I dial for like 4 or 5 hours, I'll be able to generate, let's just say, 10 calls, and like maybe one or two of those people will sign up for the service. So you can have those numbers right in front of you, and that's the ultimate metric.
So, Mr. Ayden, as the co-founder of Soto Dialer, what will be your short-term and long-term goals?
In terms of short-term goals, what we're planning on adding is like the AI transcription. We're going to integrate with more CRMs. In terms of long-term goals, we're planning on probably integrating with more softwares. So more CRMs and stuff like doing partnerships with different CRMs, and potentially even call centers as well.
So, what would be your advice for those people out there who want to contribute to this breakthrough?
I would say if you're looking to contribute to like this breakthrough of like, I would go right now in terms of like getting results because right now cold calling is very much viable. And I think it always will be viable as long as people are picking up the phones. The only major thing, which I would say is like a major caveat, is you don't want to be wasting time calling landlines. Landlines don't really work as much. Mobile numbers get approximately 5x the pickup rate, so you wanna scrape mobile numbers very specifically.
Indeed, people out there, if you are interested of this breakthrough, please contribute it. And as a co-founder of Soto Dialer, what are the books that you want to recommend to our listeners that influence your journey?
Yeah, so one really good book is From Impossible to Inevitable. It's by Aaron Ross and Jason Lemkin. Aaron Ross essentially he built Salesforce's outbound sales processes, which were entirely built off of cold calling, and he really just details like how to build like predictable revenue through like cold calling, email prospecting, etc. I would definitely recommend checking out that book because it gives you a really good idea of how powerful cold calling is. And Salesforce is one of the most well-known names when it comes to like CRMs. And it's primarily because they push like crazy. They really scaled up their sales team. And it's still very much possible to do today if you're doing it correctly.
Thank you for your recommendation, Mr. Aidan, and I hope people will read it because for sure they will empower empower them. How does it affect the quality of conversation between reps and prospects?
So the quality of conversations is very good because we have like a back end system to be able to detect whether something is like an answering machine or an actual person. We use like AI to be able to do that. So it's very, very good in terms of like the actual quality because one of the cool things we do as well is we're able to make it so that way as soon as the lead is getting connected, they're immediately connected versus some dialers the lead is just waiting in silence for like 3, 5, 10 seconds. We make it so that way it's as little time as possible for them to be connected so it's a high quality conversation. As soon as the lead is connected, the actual agent or sales rep is connected.
Mr. Aiden, are there risks of over automation, and how do you balance technology with human touch?
I would say there are obviously things you shouldn't like automate in business. For example, certain aspects of like customer support and things like that. A lot of people do not enjoy talking to AI in that regard. Um, Stuff which can be automated are more so like the manual tasks, such as like dialing or such as like emailing. A lot of these like more like boring tasks, which don't really require as much creativity, can definitely be automated. So tasks which require more ingenuity should not be automated, especially like high level tasks. A good example would be if you're talking to a major company, let's just say a 7 or 8 or 9 figure company. Personally, you should be on that call yourself if you're early on, and it should not even be a sales rep. It should definitely not be AI. It should be like an actual human being. So I would say that at least as of right now, sales calls in particular cannot be automated.
What are some common misconceptions about parallel dialing you often hear?
One of the ones which I hear all the time is sometimes people think like, well, what if the person hangs up or something? Then I'll just be missing out on that lead because you're calling so many people at the same time. And that's just a misconception because our system um, is created so that way the drop off rate, the number of people hanging up, is always below 3%, which is compliant with the standards. So we have a way on the back end to auto adjust so that way it's never above 3%. So that way you can talk to a lot of people at scale. And the other misconception I would say is that people think that they're going to have a long silence before they can actually speak to someone. So the lead will just be sitting around for like 3 or 5 seconds. While that's true with traditional dialers, traditional parallel dialers, we have like our own unique processes in order to make it that you never have to wait like 5 seconds. Like the lead's never waiting around. As a result, you're able to immediately get connected. There's no wait time.
Mr. Aidan, what are your struggles in the first year of inventing this breakthrough?
In terms of struggles, I mean, I would say the biggest struggle is just kind of getting to be as known, and that's one of the biggest struggles is just being seen, because I know that like for example, if people just knew more about the dialer, they would not be using any other solution. Um, it's as simple as that.
What advice would you give to sales team considering switching to smart parallel dialing?
I would say to analyze your volume in terms of how many appointments you can handle on a daily basis. If you can handle like 5, 7 appointments, you're only getting two. I would consider that change, and you can also look into your data and figure out how much money you could be making and analyze whether it would be worth it. Because for some really small solutions, like if it's something's only like $5, probably harder to do. But then again, you probably wouldn't have sales teams for that. So as long as it's like high enough ticket, it usually makes complete sense.
Yes, indeed. So, Mr. Aiden, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and Book 101 Review in its fifth season, Comedy 101 in second season, Food 101 in its fifth season as well, Geography 101 and Love Letters in third season, and my baby podcast, Mental Health 101, Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in its fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in each first season. So please do listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. Mr. Aidan, how do you see the future of outbound sales evolving the technologies like this?
I would say that dialing is probably going to become more difficult in the future, but there will always be technologies adjusting accordingly. So, for example, I expect in the future fewer people will pick up the phone, but in turn, you're just going to be using more lines to dial. So, there's always going to be ways to do it because even though I see stuff about how people are going to stop using their phones, they're going to be switching to smart glasses, I find that highly unlikely.
Indeed. So do you think after 20 or 10 years, this innovation will not be obsolete?
It'll definitely not be obsolete because people always use phones. I mean, unless they somehow switch to like smart glasses, they stop using phones. But I just find that highly unlikely. I think it's just something which is a core part of business. And even if there was a shift towards something else, I think people will always use phones to an extent. It would just be a really, really radical shift to not use phones. Something which I don't think it would be done in like 10 years. Maybe in like 100 years, maybe people will have something more innovative. But in the near term, I don't expect, especially if a business been around for like 50, 70 years, I don't expect for them to suddenly make the shift to some new technology. That's going to require a lot of work.
Mr. Aidan Sowa, thank you so much for sharing your innovation to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your business itself?
Yeah, so I mean, you could check it out on www.zotodialer.co.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Aidan Sowa because if you support him, more and more and more empowering innovation to come. So, Mr. Aidan, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
More to come, people. See you soon.